Good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining our session this morning. I'm Gabriel, the Management Executive at First Digital, a First Technology division. We are very excited to host today's event, which will give you a practical overview of the difference between digitizing stuff and automating it. This session has two parts to it. Firstly, we'll demystify what these terms mean, and secondly, we'll demonstrate a technology example of how this can be done. Making our companies better and more efficient is important. Our customers demand top-notch service, and we are all under attack from competition out there, especially in this work-from-anywhere world. Relying on paper or wet signatures just doesn't work, or if it does, it greatly limits our ability to be efficient. Before we start today's session, just a little bit of housekeeping. Today's session will be recorded, and the recording will be made available on our First Digital Tech Summit website. Those details will be shared with you after the event. Please feel free to refer a colleague to it who might have missed today's session. Due to the size of the audience, everybody will be on mute, and we ask that you post any questions that you have in the chat window of this Teams session. You will find access to the chat window by clicking on the chat icon at the top right-hand corner of your Teams window. Questions will be discussed by our speakers towards the end of the session. It's unlikely that we'll get to answer all your questions, but our contact details will be shared at the end in order to get in touch with us directly. Today's session is not a training session. It's really a practical overview of how a paperless world can look and how tools such as Nintex, and more importantly, how a project should be approached to address these challenges in your business. We'll explain and show you, for instance, why digitizing data, such as forms or pieces of paper, is crucial before you can automate the process. The first part of the session will be hosted by Charles Coetzee, our business manager for our automation and integration team. I would also like to extend a great welcome to Amr and Ashley from Nintex, who will give you a great overview of the Nintex technology. Nintex is a long-standing partner of First Digital, a relationship that actually dates back to the inception of First Digital, and we are honored and excited to have them with us on the call. Also in the background is Stephanie Brainard, our marketing coordinator. She's operating the cogs of the webinar, so if you have any issues during today's session, please contact her using the Teams chat function. First Digital builds out many value-added services across various technology verticals. Our business consists of 5 core value propositions. Our innovation and IoT team really focuses on application development, custom mobile application development, integration and cloud development, DevOps, and infrastructure as a service type of development deployments. Charles, who I've already introduced and who will be speaking to you in a minute, runs our automation and integration team, and they really focus on business process automation, low-code development, integration, and cloud development. And so some of their core technology focuses is highlighted here on the slide. Our digital workplace team, headed up by Chris Botha, does our content management deployments, mostly based on Office 365 and SharePoint Online, and also takes Microsoft Power Platform low-code development platform to market. And then we've got a platform advisory services team who focuses on our cloud migration capabilities, and a data analytics and machine learning team purely focusing on the Microsoft Analytics stack. We would like to do a poll before we start today's session. You will see that come up in your Teams client. Please select one of the options and click submit, and we'll discuss the results in the questions part of today's session. So the question that we're posing to you before I hand over to Charles is, what do you think is the level of automation currently in your company? Okay, great. We probably had just over 20 respondents to that poll, and it seems like the majority of you have got some sort of automation already applied in your business, but there's also a fair number that indicated no automation, and dealing with fairly manual processes. Thanks for that. At the heart of First Digital, we take our customers on a digital transformation journey. Automation is key to this. The road to automation is scattered with project skeletons, And in this session, Charles will explain the crucial parts of a typical project. So without further delay, Charles, over to you.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much, Gabriel. Can you just confirm you can hear and see me?
Can see you, can hear you, and can see your deck. Thanks, Charles.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. My name is Charles Kutsia, and I'm the manager of the Automation and Integration Division at First Digital. And as Gabriel explained, in today's webinar, I will be discussing the concepts of automation versus digitization, specifically from a software innovation perspective in any type of organization. We want to explain why these concepts, automation and digitization, are important and how they tie together. We will also explore the different levels of automation itself, and then answer the question as to why is automation needed at all. And that will bring us back to our main topic of today: automation versus digitization. What are you actually doing in your organization? So let's dive into it. So automation versus digitization, why are we comparing these two concepts? And why are they sometimes used interchangeably? Now, in theory, they sound similar, but in practice, they are actually quite different type of terms and solutions. In the First Digital Automation Division, we help companies on their digital transformation and automation journey. And now along this journey, these two terms come up: digitization and automation, and quite frequently. And then we come across scenarios where a company would believe that they have automated their business process by simply digitizing one or more of their components within that business process. That would be they've taken a paper-based form, as a simple example, and digitized it into something as simple as Excel, Word, or a web page or a link that someone can access. And whilst this might be an introduction and getting you ready and set up for something like automation, what you've actually done is not automation at all. And this is where the difference between the two terms become very important. Whilst automation in of itself seems like a very simple concept, it becomes much more complex in practice. Let's therefore discuss the two terms in detail: digitization and automation, and why they are different. Digitization is the process of converting anything that's a hard paper-based copy to a digital format. Taking a paper solution to an electronic medium is the easiest way to kind of understand it. An example of this would be is something like a COVID assessment form. That's something that especially our South African attendees would be very familiar with. Once you enter a building or a restaurant or any type of establishment, you need to fill in that COVID form that just says, here's my details, and no, I've got no fever and symptoms and all of that. I think we're all very familiar with that. And most of these establishments, you have to fill that in on paper. Some of them have got machines that can do it, take your temperature, all that type of things, but most of them still have the paper-based form. So an example of digitization would be to take that paper-based form to an electronic medium so that it can be accessed on a web page, a tablet, a link, a URL. Now, there's nothing wrong with that approach. That's a very good approach because there's many benefits to it. You could be making the process faster. You could be making the storing of data easier, or at the very least, you're just saving the trees by not having to print that much paper and having it on a screen for users to implement it or to use it there. And if you've done that, you've taken the form to a digital format, whilst you have digitized it, you have not automated anything just yet. You have not dived into automation. The form will still need to be manually completed by a user. Depending on the rest of your process, data will need to be manually reviewed. It would need to be filed, stored. But instead of having it with a pen on paper, you now have a digitized solution. Digitized, but not automated. On the other hand, automation, let's talk about when are you starting to automate a process. So automation refers to the transfer of an entire business process or a task, a single step within a business process, from human intervention to a technical or software-based system. You can either take the entire process or you can take various components within the system or the process and automate that through technology. And the idea is that the components that you automated do not require any human intervention. Then we really start to get into automation. No human intervention is required. That's when we really start moving towards automation. But with that being said, that's a very simple example, of automating a business process, something like, automatically sending out an email. A simple example. No human intervention is required, and you've automated one component of your process. But that's only one single step in the entire automation journey that you can take. Now, fairly simple example, that being sending out an email automatically. But in practice, there are actually levels to automation. It's not as simple as saying my process is digitized or automated. There are levels to this. And this is a concept that we are going to expand on at a second webinar at a later stage. But for the purposes of this webinar, we just wanted to provide you an overview to say, listen, automation is actually quite a vast concept. So the model that you're seeing on your screen is the different levels of automation that's achievable within business process automation. We've adapted the model a bit, and the model actually comes from Tesla, the electric car manufacturer. It comes from their model of autonomous driving automation. Now, Tesla and the electric cars that they manufacture has this autonomous driving feature. I'm sure, well, in South Africa, at least, we don't have that access to Tesla, but for the people abroad, but we've all seen it. The Teslas have this autonomous driving feature where they can stay in a specific lane without, any human intervention, or they can automatically brake when they sense, the car senses that you're too close to something. And that's a form of autonomy, automation. And Tesla is making extreme progress in this area, but even on their own scale, Elon Musk, the CEO, believes that they'll only be able to achieve level 4 automation. So that's not even full autonomy, just level 4 by 2022. And even that in itself is saying something, quite an extreme goal, but I'm sure something that Elon Musk himself can figure out. So we took this model and we adapted it for the business process automation model, starting at level 0, which means a fully manual process. And tying that back to our digitization conversation, you might have digitized some components within your business process, but if human intervention is required or there's no autonomy, then you're still on level 0 on the automation scale. Even with digitization, you can still be on level 0 with a fully manual process. But you can also move towards the end of the scale, all the way to level 5, where you have a fully automated business process with no human intervention required. Granted, this is not always needed or possible for that matter. It's not that all processes can go up until level 5. But the model aims to show you that process automation has different levels to it. And then your processes can fall within these levels, all the way from being a fully manual process, taking it up to being a completely self-managed, self-healing business process. And with the introduction like technologies like artificial intelligence, robotic process automation, and a whole host of others, level 5 automation is really becoming possible in the near future for any business process. But you can progress through the levels. And this further strengthens our topic to say automation versus digitization. What are you actually doing? Have you digitized your business process and believe that you have achieved full automation? If you look at the scale, is there an opportunity for your business process to further extend automation? We are planning a follow-up specifically on this concept, the level of automation, at a later stage. But for now, we just wanted to show you, look, there's different levels of automation. And then the next question will be, but why do I need automation at all? And it's a surprising question, but it's one that does get asked. Why do I need to automate this? Now, during the second industrial revolution, we got introduced to assembly lines. The whole putting the vehicle on an assembly line, a manufacturing process in which semi-finished assembly moves from workstation to workstation, where parts just get added in sequence. So from start to finish, and at the finish, you'll have your fully assembled Ford Model T. And the automated moving of this assembly line revolutionized the world completely and allowed for mass production to really become a reality. And that was the first, not the first, but it was it was automation. We automated the moving of the car. And if a business failed to adopt the assembly line back all the way in the second industrial revolution as a more innovative way to deliver their project or service, the competition simply outpaced them. It would be impossible to keep up with that level of automation. So it also becomes a case of, well, I need to automate to be able to keep up. And this holds true in today with software innovation and business process automation. Automation reduces time, effort, and cost while simultaneously reducing errors in any business process. This also gives the company more time to focus on its primary objectives. It eliminates the unnecessary task and overhead, so we can focus on bigger goals. So the question should not be, why is automation needed? It should be, why are we not automating our business processes? The benefits include improved quality, increased employee satisfaction, because they can focus on other things, increased customer satisfaction, and increased operational efficiency, just to name a few. So it really should be a no-brainer as to why automation is needed in any type of organization, regardless of industry sector size. So to bring us back to our topic of today, digitization versus automation, what are you actually doing? While digitization and automation are different terms, as we've covered them, automation really needs digitization. It's not really a versus battle. It's actually in your digital transformation. The two terms need to be combined for an organization to really achieve digital transformation. The digital transformation journey actually starts before any digitization really should take place, depending on where an organization is in their digital transformation journey. In the beginning, we start with understanding your business process, and then move on to digitization that enables you to achieve through business process automation through technology. And once you've digitized, through automation can follow, and that can lead to your full digital transformation, and then moving you up to the levels of automation that we had to look at. So the question of automation versus digitization, what are you actually doing, should actually change to automation and digitization. Why are we not doing both? We need to do both, and we should not believe that digitization is complete automation. And we want to show you an example, a practical scenario of how that can really be achieved. So I'm going to be handing over back to Gabriel, who will take us into the next steps and the demo that we want to practically show you how can you easily achieve digitization and automation. So thank you, Gabriel. Back over to you.
Great, thank you, Shoal, for framing the challenge so nicely and demystifying really the relationship between automation and digitization. Before we hand over to Nintex, we'd like to just poll our audience again for our second poll of today. You should see that again come up in your chat Teams window now. The question that we want to pose this time is, which of the following technologies has your organization possibly adopted to automate processes? Great, thanks. So we see about 40% of the respondents having deployed automated processes, and about 25%, about a quarter of the respondents have digitized content but not yet moved onto automation. Great, thanks for that. So I guess without further ado, I'm delighted to welcome Amr and Ashley from the Nintex team on today's session. Amr is the pre-sales manager for Nintex. Ashley is a senior solutions engineer, and Amr will take you through a brief couple of slides to explain the value proposition and immediate history of Nintex. Whereafter he'll hand over to Ashley, who will show you the technology in action. So without further ado, gentlemen, over to you.
Thank you, Gabriel. I will just share my screen. I'll wait for the cue for you guys can hear me, and see my screen.
Can hear you, can see you, and can see your screen. Thanks, Amr.
Perfect. Cool. So before jumping into the demo, I just want to give you guys a little bit of overview of Nintex as a company, and also the various building blocks of our platform itself and how it all comes together. So as you guys can see from the slide, this shows a timeline of some of the major events that happens throughout Nintex journey since the early days till the year 2021. Actually, it's the financial year 2021, so it was very, very close. So Nintex was founded almost 16 years ago in Melbourne, Australia. Our very first product was the Nintex workflow for SharePoint, which is, as the name implies, it was an add-on on top of the SharePoint workflow engine. And the primary goal for this product is to make it easier for people to build and automate their business processes. And I would like to underline that it's like making things easy for people to automate the business processes with something was embedded in our DNA since day one. So, and also I can say this is still relevant, and you guys can see this relevancy across every investment, every acquisition that we have done throughout these 16 years. So right after that, we launched our second product, which is Nintex Forms for SharePoint, which is again something on top of SharePoint. As you guys can see, we're somehow coupled with the SharePoint ecosystem back then. And it was not strange when Microsoft changed the strategy of the SharePoint platform itself to become more of a SaaS offering that we built a rendition of our products to the Office 365 version of the Nintex Forms and Nintex Workflow. But since the year 2015, as you guys can see from the timeline, we have acquired a company called, or a product called DrewLoop, which basically not on top of SharePoint. It was something, a step towards decoupling the Nintex ecosystem from the SharePoint ecosystem. And then we took the DrewLoop product and we make it standalone document generation and becomes one of the capabilities that shapes us, shape the platform of Nintex itself. And then we started a series of internal investment acquisitions. For example, the initial version of the Nintex Analytics, the launch of Nintex Workflow Cloud, which is will actually demo part of its functionality. And then the acquisition of a ProMap, which is a process discovery and mapping tool that allow people to document processes very easily without needing to design a workflow canvas. And then also an acquisition of an RPA tool, which is EnableSoft, which has been rebranded to Nintex RPA after that, and an e-signature tool. as you guys can see, we're starting building or collecting these jigsaw puzzles and building the big picture, the end-to-end automation platform of Nintex. One of the recent acquisition was very interesting, which is the K2 software acquisition, which added different edge to Nintex platform itself, which allow us to build more of a low-code, data-driven enterprise applications as well. And yet on this slide, we don't have actually the latest acquisition, which is being announced 2 months back, which is the Cryon System acquisition, which is an RPA tool. For me, I call the RPA of the future, or the next generation RPA, which not only discovering the automation opportunities within the RPA context manually or via business analyst, actually has an automated discovery that allows you to understand and discover your automation opportunities automatically. So deploying agents on the user's machine, and it allows you to discover what the users are doing and what is the opportunities for automation. So it adds also the automatic discovery capabilities to the platform itself. So that gives you guys a bit of an overview how the Nintex has been founded and how we start building the platform and collecting it by a series of acquisitions and internal investment. The second slide basically here is we'd like to take these capabilities and rearrange them and classify them basically when they're needed throughout the stages of the automation. So we talked about the automation itself, and we like to basically map the automation as like these stages, different stages, when you try to make sense of what you're doing. So the first stage for us is like manage, which is like trying to discover what we're actually doing, what kind of processes that we have within the business, and what is the opportunities for automation. And we have ProMap capability, which allows you to basically document your processes, share it, collect feedback, identify opportunities for automation. So you will have everything ready for you to start, whether you're starting with digitizing or kicking off your automation journey. And we have the automate stage, which is, I would say, this is the biggest stage of the automation journey itself. And you guys can see it has the majority of the capabilities of the Nintex platform under there. So you could start with a form and decide to only digitizing a form, and Ashley will show us how to convert a PDF form to a web-based form using a drag and drop designer that produce basically interactive forms, which can be hosted via a web experience or even using our mobile native experience itself. And then there is other components, as you guys can see, within the automate stage, but I'd like to focus on what I like to call is the backbone of automation. Some of these, the backbone of automation could be a workflow or could be actually an RPA based automation. And for me, these two shouldn't be looking at there's like mutually exclusive. They're not mutually exclusive. You can actually have both together in your automation. You can have an RPA but that triggers a workflow, or vice versa, a workflow that actually hands off a task to an RPA bot that do and execute some of the task instead of a human. And throughout all of this automation, whether you are entering data through a form, a bot is scrapping data from an application, or a workflow is extracting data from an external system, you start collecting data. And by start collecting data, you wanted to produce data in a more consumable format. So document generation becomes very essential to basically the big picture, so you can actually start producing documents consistent. And again, back to what Carl said, actually, it's error-free. So it's always the latest version. It's always the correct information. There's less mistakes, and you generate a document and share it. And of course, you don't want to automate everything, and then at some point you want to print and sign and scan and share. You don't want to basically break the digitization circle by doing that. So a sure sign also plays a very important role to make sure that you stay in the digital realm. And that's basically the main building blocks of the automate stage. When we talk about how to optimize your business process itself as you go, you need to start collecting data about how long the task is actually taking, what is the bottlenecks, what is the expectation when you actually define the optimization and automation opportunities in the beginning, what we're actually thinking. Are you actually ticking the boxes and making success on the goals that you set early on when you define and manage the process itself or not? So Nintex Analytics gives you out-of-the-box reporting that gives you an idea of what's happening after you optimize and automate your process itself. And this is not like a sequential stages, it's a continuous thing. So after you optimize, you can actually go and update your processes. You find ways to perform tasks in a better way, and then you go and update your automation processes itself and monitor, and it goes on and on. And the good thing about Nintex Analytics is it's not just the out-of-the-box reports. You can actually hook into it using OData APIs, and you can connect it to other data sources that you have within your organization, and even visualize it using your BI tool of choice, whether it's a Tableau or Power BI. It's very also important for me to point out the shared platform component, which is not obvious in the capabilities in the top portion of the slide, which makes everything happen from the user management, the security, the governance of the platform, and the extensibility features of the platform, how you can actually connect to the platform using APIs or build a custom connector or extensions. For example, from NWC to connect to any additional or external system that we don't have as out-of-the-box connectors, you just need Open API specs, which is like a simple file. It's a configuration. You don't need to write any line of code. You just need to do this, and by simple clicks, you now integrate it with this new SaaS provider that we don't have as out-of-the-box. I think the final part before we move to the actual demo with Ashley is I want to point out is our solution accelerator gallery, which is if you go to gallery.nintex.com, there is heaps of templates that's actually categorized by capability, or you can call product or capability. You can actually go and find something that's relevant to what you're trying to do, download it, and then you start building from there. So I hope this gives you guys a little bit of overview of the Nintex platform and how it comes to life from the early inception phase today. I don't want to spend a lot of time talking. I just want to give Ashley opportunity to show you guys the Nintex platform in action. And I will basically hand over to Ashley to show us the art of possible with the Nintex platform. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Anna, and thanks very much, Charles and Gabriel, for the introductions. So I'd like to, obviously at this point in the webinar, we're going to jump over to actually looking at the little bit of the technology and how you build some of these things. And I will focus today on actually the building side of things, because I want to show you how easy it is to go from where you may have some of your digitized assets, such as Word documents or Excel spreadsheets or PDF documents, and then convert those into fully automated workflows and applications. So we'll work around an employee onboarding scenario. You could imagine that in a traditional environment or a historic environment, you may well have had a piece of paper, and you would fill out that piece of paper, you'd hand it to your manager, the manager would hand it to the HR department would do some work, and so on and so forth. What's very common these days is that you now have a Word document or a PDF file. And while by doing that first step of digitization, you may have got rid of the physical paper, you haven't actually really changed very much. If we think about it from a data perspective, data, of course, is very important for decision making, as well as for reporting and for realizing those goals of efficiencies. When you have a Word document or a PDF form, the data is not structured data, it's unstructured data. So I think that's one of the big differentiators between, the digitization of a paper document into a PDF or Word or something similar, and actually having a full automated solution. It's the data storage being in structured data so that you can report on that later on. Let's go into this a little bit more deeply now. So I think we understand from Charles why we might want to do the automation. So let's click onto the Automate tab of our Nintex Workflow Cloud platform here and actually go into start creating a workflow. So we're going to start off with that typical example of a PDF form. For those of you who may already be familiar with workflows and workflow concepts, a form is certainly not the only way to start a process. You might use schedules, or you might have a connector to a CRM system such as Salesforce or Dynamics CRM, or you may connect to SharePoint to start these processes, or a document being uploaded somewhere. But one of the common ways, of course, is to start with a form. So we can go and design that form from scratch, or we can use Nintex's intelligent PDF form converter tooling. So that comes with the Workflow Cloud platform, and it's great when you have a lot of PDF forms that you want to just convert into electronic forms. And what I would also say about this is it doesn't have to be originally a PDF form, but it's quite possible to save an Excel spreadsheet, a PowerPoint presentation, or a Word document directly from Word or the other Office tools as a PDF as well. So if these forms that you have are Word documents, no problem. Just do save to PDF and start from there. So let's go and select an appropriate form to get this particular workflow started. As I say, we're going to use an employee onboarding type scenario. I think it's well understood, because if you have a job, you probably went through some kind of employee onboarding at some point. So we have an existing PDF, the Robotics University employee onboarding form. Historically, as it says, please fill out the details of the new employee below and email this form to your line manager, who will approve it. Then they will forward the email to the HR administrator to onboard the new employee. If you need to check the status at any time, please contact either your line manager or your HR department lead. And to me, I think that's already indicating some of that difference between digitization and automation. With a workflow, you don't send emails with attached documents. You fill in a form, and the system, the workflow, knows who it needs to send the task to next. And it can do things like reminders and escalations that we're going to come to as we go through. So you can do these form conversions sort of piecemeal. So you can just select a bit of text and say, yes, I'd like that to be on my form. So the left-hand side is my original PDF. The right-hand side is the form that we're creating within Nintex. You can also just sort of go and select a large section, and it will just go and dump the fields across: first name, last name, date of birth, marital status, so on and so forth. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. It gives us a starting point to very, very quickly start converting these forms. So once we've converted the form as it is, we might want to start making some changes. So we no longer need people to worry about emailing this form. We just say, please fill out the form details of the new employee below and click submit. Excellent. You know, we're already seeing improvements here. We don't need to worry about checking the status. We maybe would like to put a logo onto the form if we want to. So let's take an image. And let's also put just a nice little header onto the form as well. So if we want to put an image up there, we just can provide a source URL. And I think I've got one remembered here. Yes, perfect. So put the logo on, and then maybe let's do put a title in here, new employee onboarding. Maybe set that as right, justified, bold, increase the size a little bit. Okay, so now we have the basics of a form. A few things that we might want to consider when we're building forms, things that make data entry more accurate than you could get with a Word document. You can simply start saying which fields are mandatory and which ones are optional, right? That already is improving the data quality that we get in the form. And of course, we're saving this data into a structured format as well. So we want that data to be usable by other systems. And going forwards, we might later consider to do an offboarding type of process, right? So if we want to do an offboarding, we need to make sure that the employee number, the user account name, the phone number, and all the other details are correct. So we can also do things with validation and put rules in here. So yes, we can say restrict past dates. So in that case, for date of birth, obviously, we want the past to be allowed. But for something like start date, which would also be required, you wouldn't want the past dates there. We also have in the Forms Designer a rules section. So you can say things like if the job role is a particular job role, then collect additional information about this. There are many different requirements, but it's all about making sure that you get accurate data. So we can also modify these forms. So it's not just about the data that we collected from the PDF itself. You might want to collect additional information. So we could use, for example, our repeating section, which is very nice, and then go and take additional data about what systems the user should have access to. So, for example, we can take a choice field, and we'll say system access, for example, and we'll just leave the default options there, option 1, 2, and 3. We can maybe make that a drop-down option, or we could do a multiple option. We might want to select here, for example, what job role the person is going for as well. And this is where forms within a workflow platform or an automation platform like Nintex really come into their own as well. Rather than having data hard-coded into a Word document or a PDF that you have to go and update and maintain, we can have things like lookup controls. So we can go and get data from an external system. So in this case, it will be just job role. And what I've created here for us is a document library with, a list item in a SharePoint site. In this case, could be any system, as long as you can get a web service to that system. It doesn't matter what that system is. Anything you want, on-premise, in the cloud, basically any system that you can get a web service access to. And we have connectors to a lot of systems out of the box as well. So we'll just go for data source configuration. I've got my data sources already set up. This is the kind of thing to set these data sources up. It takes seconds, but it's not hugely relevant to show you that in detail. So we can take just the employee onboarding job titles, and then we just have to say, yep, that's it. Good. So you can add conditions here as well. So if you want to limit a certain amount of, if you want to put a limit in here to make sure the form can load a little bit quicker, or you can put conditions as well. So they can be filtered by other fields. You can do cascading drop-down or cascading drop-down with that as well. Okay, so there's a basic form that allows us to just go and collect a little bit of structured data to get this process up and running. It looks like I have missed something here. Just have to select we want title and title on that. There we go. So we can preview this form as well. And I just realized I've set some of those fields to be read-only, not required. Probably those of you who are paying attention would have spotted that as I was talking. So let's change those from read-only to required. Okay, so let's have a preview here. Okay, now that's looking like a usable form. At that point, we can click out of the form designer, and we'll see that we have in the variables section of the workflow designer all of the details from our form made available for use in the workflow, and we'll come back to those later. A couple of other things to point out. I'd like this form to be used in Nintex Mobile and My Nintex, and I think we can then go and start thinking about tasks. So task routing is the next step of automation. Do you want to assign a task to a user's manager, such as, the line manager? So line manager approval, and they can approve or reject. Of course, they can also have the classic rework. So you want to route it back to the originator of the workflow. It's important to be able to determine who the assignee should be. And one of the best options is the workflow initiator capability, or I believe we can create additional variables. We can use people from data that we've entered in onto the form, and we can do lookups to Active Directory or any authentication system that you have to go and determine who is the line manager that we want to allocate this task to. So looking it up dynamically. Of course, we have email notifications. So please approve new employee. And then we can say, dear so-and-so, and we can take, for example, data from the form, workflow name, put these variables in, please approve this new employee. And we can put the details of the new employee in there as well. So we take the variables from the form, first name, last name, so on and so forth. Okay, so at this point, we've automated that step of filling in the form. We've automated the step of routing the form to an appropriate manager. At some point, we might want to take advantage of the document generation capabilities that we have in the Nintex platform. So we'd actually want to go and create a contract for this new employee to actually sign. Okay, so to create the contract, we need to first retrieve a template. What I've also done, just to show you quickly behind the scenes here, I've created the document generation templates, and these are just Word documents that would form a contract, such as a non-disclosure agreement or an employee contract. I put some yellow highlights, such as the start date of when this agreement should take place. And what we'll do is we'll use the document generation to go and fill in these details of the contract. So the first thing we need to do is get a file, I believe it's called. So we're going to load this up from SharePoint Online. You'll notice from the connectors, we can do it from Dropbox, Box, Google Drive, OneDrive for Business, many different systems. So we'll just go and grab this document template or contract template from my O365 site. We can use the URL, and I've saved that just in here. So now we'll load that document up into a variable. So that will be contract template, like so. And now we can go to the generate document step, and we can put in the contract template as an input to the generation of the document. And the important thing that we need to do is to tag this document. So the document tagger is what allows us to create what we call the tokens. Okay, so we have all of the data from the form. So first name, last name, start date, date of birth, whether a desk is required, and so on and so forth. And we can just copy these tags, and then we put them into the templates. And it's that easy. That's done. That's all we have to do to start generating these documents automatically. Make sure that you've saved and closed the templates, and we're good to go with that part. Okay, so once we've generated the document, sorry, I do have to just set the output file name. So this contract should be called contract, and then in the file name, we'll also want the details of, say, first name, last name, and maybe the current date. Okay. And then we'll save that contract into generated files. Now that could actually be multiple files, so it's a type called a collection. And the next thing that we'd like to do is to go and get a signature for that. So I mean a real world actual digital signature, so a legally verifiable digital signature. And we have the Nintex Assure Sign platform for this, where we can just drag on a get a signature. Now there's one small step that we have to do. We need to get the file from the collection. So just get item from collection. We have to grab that because it's multiple files. The generated files is many files. And the first file in there, we want to save it to new contract. So, and then we can put that in. And now we're able to use that single specific file with our digital signature Assure Sign platform. So we've pre-created the digital signature connection. We specify the demo and test account. The template is just a dummy template because we replace the dummy template with the document that we just created, the new contract document. And then we set up the signers. And again, this is just a case of providing the name from the first name, space, last name. And we didn't actually have the email on there, so we'll just put that to myself, like so. And then that's all we need to do. Now, there is a couple of important things here. We allow you to use SMS as two-factor authentication. So receiving the email is one factor of authentication. And the second factor is we have the phone number. So we also can send a password to the user's phone number so that we have a good level of confidence that the person who was signing the document really is that person. We could also choose to give to create a password here. And that password would be requested when the document is being signed. So these are great options to include for digital signature scenarios. Once we've got a signature from this, a traditional employee onboarding scenario would do something like send an email to the IT team. Well, that's first level automation. To come back to Charles' analogy of the different levels of automation. A second level of automation would be to go and say, you know what, I'd like to send a task to the IT team. And when we send a task, we can do things like include reminders and escalations. So if the task is not completed within a certain amount of time, it will be followed up upon. And we also record analytics data, such as how long these tasks take. So if you think about the scenario where with a new employee, we would have to have the IT team create an Active Directory user to add that Active Directory user to a number of groups, and then maybe somebody else would go and post a welcome message to a Teams board or to a Slack channel or even on LinkedIn or Twitter. And these would be things that people would traditionally do manually. And using assign a task to say, hey, Steve, please go and post on Twitter, or Darren, please go and create an Active Directory user. That is task-based automation, but we can go one better using connectors and fully automate these items by leveraging these out-of-the-box connectors for example, create a user. So Active Directory, Azure Active Directory, create a user. When we do that, we just have to simply specify the name of the user, the username. Yes, they have to change their password when they first log in. Again, we'll just take the variables from the start form that we're using, first name, space, last name. We can just use first name of username. The output is user password. Now, this password is an auto-generated sort of first login password, we can again choose to send that password out by SMS. So with an SMS gateway provider, such as ClickSend, we can then send an email to the user where it contains their username, but we'll send their password to them using here is your new password, check your email for the username, for example. And then we have that Azure Active Directory user password. We can just put the password in there. So we have a secure mechanism with two-factor authentication to go and get this user set up. Another thing that we might like to do is to do that host to a Teams channel, okay, so on and so forth. Now, there's a lot of things to do here, and I'm aware I'm running a little bit tight on time, and we do want to leave a little bit of time for questions and answers. So I'd like to just extend out of the workflow design experience now and across to a couple of other areas of the platform. I think you've got the concept for how easy it is to build these workflows. So we have the Nintex analytics platform. When you build your solutions based upon a platform such as Nintex, it will constantly be recording data, and it will give you these dashboards where you can store data such as what does your user, hang on, let me refresh this. It'll store data about how many workflows have I created. This is sort of an administrative dashboard telling you about the landscape and the uptake. So if you're part of a process department, this would be important to you. What we can also do is connect a business intelligence tool out to this workflow data as well. And for each different application, issue reporting, expense claim, account request, invoice, incidents process, claims handling, we can start to see the total number of instances, the trends across a year, the average duration of these processes. We can then dig into the task level items, so specific tasks within specific processes, what's taking a long time, what is quick, where can we improve our business, ultimately is the value that you get out of this. And this is value that you will get out of automation beyond just basic digitization. And very quickly, finally, before we hand back, we'll just mention that we do also have the mobile device or the mobile application. So any form that you build inside of Nintex will be able to be used on a mobile device, also in offline scenarios. So if you have field engineers going out into the countryside and they might not have an internet connection, they'll still be able to capture the data and submit that within the mobile application. And then when they are back online again, and that will get sent to the workflow, and they'll be able to receive the tasks and complete the tasks as they need to do. So the mobile capability is there as well. Okay, we were a little bit tight on time there, actually. So I've only scratched the surface. If anything that I've shown you here is of interest, then I would love for you to reach out to our partners, First Digital, Gabriel, Charles, or anybody else in the organization, and let's have a conversation about how we can get you a more specific demo and show you greater value of the platform. With that, I'd like to thank you and hand back to Gabriel to wrap things up for us. Thanks, everyone.
Great, thanks. Ashley, thank you so much. Seeing Nintex in action always blows me away, even after working with the technology for over a decade. And I think it's also reflected in First Digital's commitment to the technology, being one of your largest certified partners globally on your technology stack. So I'm cautious that we've run short on time. So I'm going to ask, I've put an email address on the screen there, automation@firsttech.digital, and I'll make sure that Stephanie also share that with you afterwards, including the recording. If you have any questions from today's session, or there's areas that you would have liked to further explore that we didn't cover in today's session, please feel free to reach out to us on those contact details, and we will make sure that either Charles, or Ashley or Amr get in touch with you to address those questions. But again, thank you very much to our speakers today. I want to thank Charles from our automation team, Amr and Ashley from Nintex for joining our session today, and then to all of you. Thank you very much for joining us today. And like I said, the recording of the session will be sent out to all of you if you would like to share that with any of your colleagues. So we will close the session down. Thank you very much again, and have a nice day.